The ache you feel when you're alone is not emptiness, it's discovery. Your loneliness is not punishing you, it's teaching you. It's stripping away every false voice, every borrowed identity, every mask you've worn to belong. And in that stripping, you're being introduced to the person you were always meant to become. Most people fear solitude because it forces them to face the one person they've been running from their entire life, themselves. You spent years surrounded by people who never saw you. You've been in rooms full of voices that drowned out your own. You've carried conversations that left you feeling more isolated than silence ever could. And now you're alone, and it terrifies you. Because you were taught that loneliness is failure. You were raised to believe that connection equals value, that visibility equals worth, that being needed means you matter. So when the crowd disappears and the noise fades and you're left with just you, you panic. You reach for your phone. You scroll. You text someone, anyone, just to feel less invisible. You fill the silence with distractions because the quiet feels like punishment. But it's not punishment, it's preparation. Loneliness is the classroom where you learn your own voice. It's the forge where your identity is hammered into shape. It's the wilderness where God separates you from the crowd so he can speak without interference. You cannot hear your purpose in the noise. You cannot discover your identity in the opinions of others. You cannot become who you were designed to be while you're still performing for people who don't even know your name. Loneliness is not your enemy, it's your mentor. It's teaching you discernment. It's showing you who actually matters. It's revealing the difference between companionship and codependency, between being loved and being used, between connection and consumption. You've been rejected. You've been overlooked. You've been excluded from circles you once thought defined you. And it hurt. It still hurts. Because rejection feels like evidence that something is wrong with you. But what if the rejection wasn't about your worth? What if it was about your direction? What if you were removed from certain spaces, not because you didn't belong, but because you were never supposed to stay? A seed doesn't fail when it's buried. It's being positioned. The darkness isn't rejection. It's incubation. And what looks like isolation is actually transformation. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. There's a young lion born in a zoo. It grows up behind bars, fed by handlers, surrounded by crowds who watch it through glass. It has everything it needs to survive, but it never learns to hunt. It never learns to roar. It never discovers the power encoded in its DNA. Then one day it's released into the wild and it's terrified because the zoo was comfortable. The zoo was predictable. The zoo felt safe. But the wild is where lions become lions. And your loneliness is your wild. It's where you stop performing and start becoming. It's where you stop mimicking others and start discovering the instinct buried inside you. The zoo was never your home. You just got used to the cage. You've been chasing approval like oxygen. You've shaped yourself into whoever the room needed you to be. You've silenced your truth to keep the peace. You've dimmed your light so others wouldn't feel threatened. And now you're exhausted because pretending is expensive. Performance drains you. And approval is a currency that devalues the moment you stop earning it. So you're alone now. And you think it's because you failed. But maybe you're alone because you finally stopped pretending. Maybe the isolation you feel is just the gap between who you were pretending to be and who you actually are. And that gap, that loneliness, is the birthplace of authenticity. Here's what nobody tells you. The wilderness is where clarity lives. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before he became a deliverer. Jesus spent 40 days in isolation before he began his ministry. David tended sheep alone in the fields before he faced Goliath. Elijah encountered God not in the earthquake or the fire, but in the whisper that came after the noise. Your season of loneliness is not wasted time. It's sacred time. It's the interval between who you were and who you're becoming. And every moment you spend in that space is shaping your future in ways you cannot yet see. You spend so much energy trying to fit into spaces that were never designed for you. You've contorted yourself to match the expectations of people who don't understand your assignment. You've downplayed your gifts to make others comfortable. You've apologized for your presence when you should have been celebrating your purpose. And the exhaustion you feel isn't just physical. It's spiritual. It's the fatigue that comes from living outside of your design. Your manufacturer built you for something specific. And when you operate outside of that specification, you malfunction. Not because you're broken, but because you misaligned. Think about it. A fish is brilliant in water, but put that same fish on land and it struggles. It gasps. It fights for survival. Does that mean the fish is flawed? No. It means the fish is out of its element. And you've been gasping in environments that were never meant for you. You've been judging your worth based on how well you perform in spaces that contradict your design. And your loneliness, your isolation, is God removing you from the wrong environment so you can finally breathe, so you can finally function the way you were built to function. So you can finally stop apologizing for being exactly who you were created to be. Before I continue, answer one question honestly. When was the last time you sat with yourself, no distractions, no escape, and actually listened to what your soul was trying to tell you? If you're still listening, something inside you is waking up. You've been confusing movement with direction. You've been busy, connected, surrounded, but still lost. Because direction is not about speed, it's about alignment. You can move fast in the wrong direction and waste years. Or you can stand still, recalibrate, and discover the path that was meant for you all along. Loneliness slows you down. It forces you to stop running. It removes the distractions that kept you from hearing the truth. And in that stillness, you begin to see clearly. You begin to ask the right questions. Not, why doesn't anyone want me? But who am I without the validation? Not, why am I alone? But what am I being prepared for? There's a craftsman in a small village. He takes a piece of raw metal and places it in fire. The metal doesn't understand. It only feels the heat. It only knows the pain. Then the craftsman removes it, places it on an anvil, and begins to strike it over and over. The metal is shaped, folded, heated again. It's a violent process, an uncomfortable process. But the craftsman isn't destroying the metal. He's creating a blade. He's turning something formless into something with purpose. Your loneliness is the fire. Your pain is the hammer. And the isolation you're enduring is not breaking you, it's making you sharp. You grow in silence. You heal in silence. You rise in silence. The loudest transformations happen in the quietest moments. A tree doesn't announce its growth. A wound doesn't heal on stage. A caterpillar doesn't broadcast its metamorphosis. And you don't need an audience to become who you were created to be. Your loneliness is not a sign that you've forgotten. It's proof that you're being focused, refined, redirected. The crowd cheers for performance, but transformation requires privacy. And right now, you're in the cocoon, uncomfortable, confined, unseen, but not abandoned. You've been looking for someone to complete you. But completion is not a person. It's a process. You've been searching for external validation to fill an internal void. But no relationship can heal what only solitude can reveal. You've been running from yourself, hoping someone else would make you whole. But wholeness is not given, it's discovered. And it's discovered alone, in the quiet, in the wrestle. In the moments when there's no one left to perform for, And you finally have to face the truth about who you are, what you want, and where you're going. Your loneliness is exposing the friendships that were built on convenience, not covenant. It's revealing the relationships that only existed because you were useful, not because you were valued. It's showing you the difference between people who celebrate you and people who tolerate you. And yes, it hurts to see the truth. But it's better to be alone and aligned than surrounded and used. It's better to walk solo toward your purpose than to drag dead weight towards someone else's agenda. Your isolation is not evidence of your insignificance. It's proof of your transition. There's a farmer who plants a seed in the ground for weeks. Nothing happens. The surface remains unchanged. The soil looks dead, but beneath the surface, something is happening. Roots are stretching. Life is forming. Strength is building. And then one day, a shoot breaks through. Small, fragile, but undeniable. The seed didn't fail during the waiting. It was working, and so are you. Just because no one sees your progress doesn't mean you're not growing. Just because your season feels barren doesn't mean it's wasted. You're underground right now, and that's exactly where transformation happens. You've been told that success is loud, that impact is visible, that purpose is applauded, but the deepest work happens in obscurity. The strongest foundations are laid in silence. The most powerful voices are forged in the wilderness, and the greatest leaders are shaped in seasons when no one is watching. Your loneliness is not your disqualification. It's your development. You're not being sidelined. You're being sharpened. And when the time comes, when your moment arrives, you won't just show up. You'll show up ready. Let me tell you about a woman who spent 3 years alone after losing everything. Her business failed. Her marriage ended. Her friends moved on. She sat in an empty apartment with nothing but her thoughts and her pain. Every morning she woke up to silence. Every night she went to bed questioning her worth. She applied for jobs and got rejected. She reached out to old friends and got ignored. She prayed for breakthrough and heard nothing. And in that nothingness, in that excruciating silence, something shifted. She stopped asking God to bring people back. She started asking God to show her who she was without them. She stopped begging for opportunities. She started building her own art. She stopped waiting for validation. She started validating herself. 3 years later, she launched a company that now employs 17 people. But here's what matters more than the success. She built it from a place of wholeness, not emptiness. She created it from clarity, not desperation. Her loneliness didn't destroy her. It refined her. It taught her that she didn't need the crowd's permission to step into her calling. That's what your season is doing. It's removing the dependency. It's breaking the addiction to external approval. It's teaching you that your value doesn't fluctuate based on who's in the room. You are not less significant because you're alone. You are not less powerful because you're unseen. You're not less purpose because you're unrecognized. You're being developed in the dark so that when you step into the light, you won't be blinded by it. You won't be intoxicated by applause. You won't be destabilized by criticism because you already know who you are. Stop waiting for permission to become who you are. Stop waiting for validation to pursue what you know you're called to do. Stop waiting for the crowd to approve. Before you step into your purpose, the waiting is over. The classroom of loneliness has taught you enough. You know your voice now. You know your worth now. You know your direction now. And it's time to move. Not with fear, not with hesitation, but with the quiet confidence that comes from being alone long enough to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Here's the truth that will change everything. Your loneliness is seasonal, but the lessons are permanent. This isolation won't last forever. The silence won't stretch into eternity. People will come. Opportunities will open. Connection will return. But when it does, you won't be the same person who entered this season. You'll be wiser, stronger, more discerning, more aligned. And you won't accept every invitation just because you're afraid of being alone again. You won't tolerate toxic relationships just because you're desperate for connection. You won't shrink yourself just to fit into spaces that require you to be smaller than your calling. Because loneliness taught you something the crowd never could. You can survive without them, but you cannot survive without yourself. There's a forest that grows deep in the mountains. No one visits, no one hikes the trails, no one takes pictures. The trees grow in complete obscurity. And yet they're some of the tallest, strongest trees in the world. Why? Because they don't grow for an audience. They grow because growth is their nature. They reach toward the sun, not for applause, but because reaching is what they were designed to do. And you are like those trees. You don't need spectators to fulfill your purpose. You don't need validation to grow. You don't need recognition to become. You just need roots. Deep roots, strong roots. Roots that go down into the soil of your identity and anchor you in truth. And loneliness is where those roots develop. You've been so focused on what you've lost that you haven't noticed what you've gained. You lost the fake friends, but you gained discernment. You lost the draining relationships, but you gained energy. You lost the applause, but you gained authenticity. You lost the noise, but you gained clarity. You lost the crowd, but you gained yourself. And that trade, painful as it was, is the best exchange you'll ever make. Because you can rebuild a social circle. You can reconnect with people. You can find community again. But if you lose yourself in the process of keeping others, you've lost everything. Your loneliness is also teaching you about timing. You've been frustrated because things aren't happening fast enough. You've been angry because doors aren't opening. You've been discouraged because the breakthrough hasn't come. But timing is not about speed. It's about readiness. God doesn't release you into your next season based on your impatience. He releases you based on your preparedness. And right now, in this lonely season, you're being prepared. Your character is being built. Your faith is being tested. Your patience is being stretched. Your identity is being solidified. And when the preparation is complete, when the lesson is learned, when you're truly ready, the door will open. Not a moment sooner, not a moment later. Exactly when you're ready to walk through it without stumbling. Think about a potter and clay. The potter takes a lump of clay, shapeless and soft, and begins to work. He presses, he molds, he shapes, and then he places it in the fire. The clay doesn't understand the fire. It only feels the heat. It only knows the discomfort. But the potter knows something the clay doesn't. Fire is what makes it permanent. Fire is what transforms it from soft and pliable into strong and unbreakable. Without the fire, the clay remains fragile. One drop of water and it collapses. One moment of pressure and it crumbles. But after the fire, after the heat, after the process, the clay becomes a vessel, useful, durable, purposeful. Your loneliness is the fire, and you're not being destroyed. You're being made permanent. You've also been learning to distinguish between isolation and solitude. Isolation is forced. Solitude is chosen. Isolation feels like punishment. Solitude feels like preparation. Isolation makes you feel abandoned. Solitude makes you feel focused. And somewhere in this season, your isolation transformed into solitude. Somewhere along the way, you stopped resenting the quiet and started using it. You stopped fearing the alone and started embracing it. You stopped seeing loneliness as evidence of failure and started recognizing it as evidence of transition. That shift, that subtle internal shift, is the moment you stop being a victim of your circumstances and became a steward of your season. Your loneliness taught you discernment. It taught you strength. It taught you that you don't need a crowd to validate your calling. It taught you that silence is not emptiness, it's clarity. It taught you that being alone is not the same as being abandoned. You were never forgotten. You were being prepared. And now the preparation is complete. Now the lesson is learned. Now you rise. Not because the pain is gone, but because the purpose is clear. You are not who you were when this season started. You are sharper. wiser, stronger, more focused, more aligned. And the world needs what you're about to become. But let me be clear about something. This message is not telling you to stay lonely forever. It's not romanticizing isolation. It's not suggesting that you should avoid connection or reject community. What it's saying is this: use this season. Don't waste it. Don't spend it drowning in self-pity or bitterness or resentment. Don't scroll through social media comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. Don't fill the silence with distractions that numb the growth. Sit in it, feel it, learn from it, ask the hard questions, face the uncomfortable truths. Do the inner work that you've been avoiding. Because when this season ends, and it will end, you want to walk out of it transformed, not just tired. Loneliness also reveals your true motives. When you had the crowd, you couldn't tell if you were serving your purpose or serving your ego. You couldn't distinguish between genuine passion and performance addiction. You couldn't separate your calling from your need for applause. But now, in the quiet, with no one watching, no one clapping, no one validating, you're forced to confront the truth. Do you still care about your purpose when no one's paying attention? Do you still show up when there's no recognition? Do you still work when there's no reward? If the answer is yes, then you know it's real. If the answer is no, then loneliness just saved you from a lifetime of chasing the wrong thing. And here's what's coming: a season where everything shifts, a season where doors open, where connections form, where opportunities multiply, where visibility increases. But you won't enter that season the same person you were before. You will enter it grounded, rooted, secure. You won't be desperate for acceptance because you've already accepted yourself. You won't be addicted to validation because you've already validated your own worth. You won't be performing for applause because you've learned to move in obedience, not ovation. And that version of you, the version being formed in this lonely season, is unstoppable. The isolation ends, but the transformation is permanent. The silence breaks, but the clarity remains. The loneliness fades, but the strength stays. And when you look back on this season, you won't remember it as the time you were alone. You remember it as the time you found yourself. You'll remember it as the season that defined you, shaped you, prepared you, launched you. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning. And what begins in the wilderness always ends in victory. There's something else your loneliness is teaching you that you haven't fully grasped yet. It's teaching you the difference between needing people and choosing people. For so long, you needed people. You needed them to feel worthy. You needed them to feel seen. You needed them to validate your existence. And that need made you tolerate things you should have walked away from. It made you compromise boundaries. It made you accept crumbs when you deserved feasts. But loneliness is breaking that need. It's not making you cold or independent in an unhealthy way. It's making you whole. And when you're whole, you stop needing people to complete you. You start choosing people who complement you. You stop accepting anyone who offers attention. You start selecting people who offer alignment. Let me tell you about a man who lost his entire support system in 1 year. His mentor passed away. His business partner betrayed him. His closest friend relocated across the country. And suddenly, the man who was always surrounded found himself completely alone. No one to call, no one to process with, no one to celebrate wins or mourn losses. He sat in that loneliness for months, and it was brutal. He questioned everything, his choices, his character, his purpose. But slowly, something remarkable happened. He began to hear his own voice again. Not the echo of his mentor's advice, not the influence of his partner's opinions, not the reflection of his friend's perspective. His own voice. And that voice led him to a business idea that had been buried under years of committee thinking. He launched it alone, built it alone, scaled it alone, and within 2 years, it became more successful than anything he built with others. Not because partnership is bad, but because he needed that season of solitude to discover what was uniquely his. Your loneliness is doing the same work. It's excavating your original voice. It's unearthing your authentic vision. It's revealing the dreams that belong to you, not the dreams you borrowed from people you admired. And when you finally step back into community, when you finally reconnect with people, you won't be bringing a diluted version of yourself. You'll be bringing the real thing, the refined thing, the version of you that knows exactly who it is and what it brings to the table. And that clarity will attract the right people. Not everyone, but the right ones. You're also learning in this season that loneliness exposes the lies you believed about yourself. When you're surrounded by people, their voices drown out the negative narratives. Their encouragement temporarily silences the self-doubt. Their presence distracts you from the pain. But when they leave, when the noise stops, you're left with the thoughts you've been running from. And those thoughts are brutal. You're not good enough. You're not talented enough. You're not lovable enough. You're too much. You're not enough. And in this lonely season, you finally have to face those lies. You have to interrogate them. You have to ask, where did this belief come from? Who planted it? Is it actually true? And as you begin to dismantle those lies, brick by brick, you begin to rebuild your identity on truth. Not on trauma, not on rejection, not on past failures, but on truth, on design, on purpose. There's also a financial dimension to loneliness that nobody talks about. When you're lonely, you're forced to stop spending money trying to buy connection. You stop going to events you don't care about just to be around people. You stop buying rounds of drinks to keep the party going. You stop funding friendships that require financial investment to stay afloat. And in that financial pause, you start to see how much of your resources were being drained by relationships that gave nothing back. Your loneliness is not just teaching you emotional boundaries. It's teaching you financial boundaries. It's showing you that true connection doesn't cost money. It costs authenticity, vulnerability, time, presence. And when you rebuild your social life from that foundation, you'll attract people who value you, not your wallet. Loneliness is also the great equalizer. It doesn't matter how successful you are, how famous you are, how wealthy you are. When you're alone, when you're truly alone, all the accolades fall away. All the titles dissolve. All the accomplishments fade into the background. And you're left with just you. No status, no platform, no audience, just you. And that's terrifying for people who've built their identity on external measures of success. But it's liberating for people who are willing to do the work, because when everything else is stripped away, you discover what actually matters. You discover what you actually care about. You discover who you actually are beneath the performance. And that discovery is worth more than any trophy, any promotion, any applause. Here's what nobody tells you about coming out of loneliness. You won't want everyone back. You look at the people who left and realize you don't miss them. You think about the spaces you used to occupy and realize you've outgrown them. You remember the version of yourself that needed constant validation and realize you're not that person anymore. And that realization will feel strange because you spent so long trying to get back what you lost. You spent so long hoping people would return. But now that you're whole, now that you're clear, now that you align, you realize that not everyone deserves access to the new version of you. And that's not arrogance. That's wisdom. That's stewardship. That's protecting what God spent this entire season building. The loneliness is ending. But it's not ending because you're desperate for it to end. It's ending because you're ready for it to end. You've learned the lessons. You've done the work. You've faced the darkness. You've wrestled with the questions. You've rebuilt your foundation. And now you're ready for what's next. Not because you need what's next to feel complete, but because you're ready to bring your completeness into what's next. And that shift, that subtle but monumental shift, changes everything. If this message spoke to your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. And if you want more messages that grow your soul, subscribe, because your journey has just begun. Here's an 800-word conclusion to that powerful message about loneliness. The journey through loneliness is not a linear path. It's a spiral of growth, understanding, and transformation. As you emerge from this season, you'll notice that you carry yourself differently, not with the desperate energy of someone seeking approval, but with the quiet confidence of someone who has found their center. The most profound change isn't in your circumstances, it's in your perspective. You no longer view solitude as a punishment, but recognize it as a powerful tool for growth. You understand that the empty spaces in your life aren't voids to be filled, but rather sacred ground where your authentic self can emerge. What you've gained in this season is invaluable. The ability to distinguish between loneliness and solitude, the wisdom to choose connection rather than chase it, the strength to stand alone without feeling broken, the clarity to recognize your true purpose, the courage to honor your boundaries, the discernment to protect your peace. You've learned that your worth isn't measured by your social circle's circumference, but by the depth of your self-understanding. The silence that once terrified you has become a trusted advisor. The solitude that once felt like abandonment has transformed into a sanctuary of self-discovery. Moving forward, you'll notice that you attract different kinds of relationships. People will be drawn to your authenticity rather than your availability. They'll respect your boundaries because you respect them first. They'll value your presence because you've learned to value your own. Your relationship with yourself has fundamentally changed. You no longer need constant external validation because you've learned to validate yourself. You don't seek completion in others because you've discovered your own wholeness. You don't fear being alone because you know the difference between being alone and being lonely. This new foundation will serve you in every area of your life. In your career, you'll make decisions based on purpose rather than popularity. In your relationships, you'll choose quality over quantity. In your creative endeavors, you'll express your truth rather than echo others. In your spiritual life, you'll seek depth rather than performance. In your personal growth, you'll prioritize authenticity over acceptance. Remember that this transformation didn't happen to you, it happened for you. The season of loneliness was your cocoon, not your cage. It was your training ground, not your punishment. It was your preparation, not your penalty. As you step into your next season, carry these truths with you. Your worth is not determined by your relationship status. Your impact is not measured by your audience size. Your purpose is not validated by popular opinion. Your power is not diminished by periods of solitude. Your journey is not defined by who? He walks with you. The world needs people who have been through the wilderness and emerged stronger. It needs voices that have been refined by solitude, not just echoes of the crowd. It needs leaders who understand that influence comes from integrity, not just visibility. You are that person now. You've earned this wisdom through the nights you spent alone, through the tears you cried in private, through the battles you fought in silence. Don't diminish what this season has built in you by rushing back into old patterns or compromising your new standards. Your story isn't just about surviving loneliness. It's about being transformed by it. It's about emerging from this season with a clearer vision, a stronger voice, and a deeper understanding of who you are and what you're here to do. The loneliness served its purpose. It stripped away what was false, revealed what was true, and prepared you for what's next. But remember, what's next isn't about finding people to complete you. It's about connecting with people who celebrate the complete person you've become. You're ready now. Not because the pain is gone, but because you've learned its purpose. Not because the loneliness has ended, but because you've understood its message. Not because you've found all the answers, but because you've learned to trust the journey. Step forward with confidence. Your season of isolation has equipped you with everything you need for your season of impact. The wilderness has done its work. The preparation is complete. The transformation is permanent. You are not who you were when this season began. You are stronger, wiser, clearer, and more authentic. And that version of you, the one shaped by solitude, refined by loneliness, and strengthened by isolation, that's the version the world has been waiting for. Your time of hiding is over. Your season of preparation is complete. Step into your purpose with the quiet confidence of someone who has faced their fears, embraced their truth, and emerged stronger. The world needs what your loneliness has built in you,